of our governor debates, but we're really excited that we can now segue over to lieutenant governors who are now all here. And so it's my pleasure to introduce you to our facilitator for this forum. She is the Director of Instruction of the Youth Leadership Institute Initiative at the University of Virginia Center for Politics. And she's also a Waynesboro resident. Some of you saw her facilitate the event at Wilson 2 weeks ago, which was really great, well received. And it's Meg Hughes.
I'm kind of short. So, I think that'll work. I speak loudly as well, so it'll be okay. That's scary. That's funny. So it's great to be here among my neighbors. I am originally from Baltimore, and I've lived now in Waynesboro for 13 years, and I love it. You guys have been so welcoming and wonderful to me, as has the Center for Politics. Our motto there is politics is a good thing, and I guess because you're all here, so events like this, you are putting your pay, I commend you for wanting to take it. We're going to have them tell us. So first, even though I said I wasn't a for Virginia families for 20 years. Wow.
We moved them so that we could see the captioning.
Jumping and grabbing the chairs.
And we'll have the mic.
This is something I'm very comfortable with. Next, we have Gene Rossi, and he has a passion for protecting people. So we're going to hear about that. Thanks, Gene. I also think politics is a fun thing.
Oh, okay.
So that's why. And last but not least, Justin Fairfax, who I've met before. He's done many, other things. I think I met you at a We the People event. He has attended the, and I will tell you about that at another date, but we should get our school children. And I'm new to this. My boss, Larry Salvador, he's good at this. You know what? Watch. Oh, I was going to say, sometimes I put a paper, the old-fashioned way, when you don't know what to do. While we're waiting, we'll start with Susan, because she doesn't have writing on her head. So, Susan, are you sure? Yes. Okay, whatever you want to do. Introduce yourself, and here's what I want you to do. After you briefly introduce yourself, tell us the light bulb moment or the inspiration for you getting into public life. Okay?
I still write it
Give me more hair. My dad wants to give me hair. Should I go up there or go right here?
Whatever you're
I'm
comfortable
going to go up there.
Yeah, do that.
Hey, you're asking me when I made the decision to run.
What was your light bulb moment? Like that thing that inspired you to enter public life?
January 20th, 2013. At Johns Hopkins University. My wife Diane, whose grandfather, Beverly Dickerson, Academy for about 2 years. War, was a medic in France, had health issues, the gas. 13, I was wise. Me, best a 50-50 chance to live. I had a rare blood disease called amyloidosis, LOIDOSIS. It affects about 1 out of 1 million people. Lucky me. I was going through high-dose treatment and then a stem cell transplant. And I was watching a television screen. Barack Obama was taking the oath of office for a second term. And in the audience were these little specks. And 2 of those specks were 2 of our 3 children. Our daughter Lee was at home. Will Rossi, who's 24. Our son Jack, who's 16, he's at home making TV dinners. And they were by a tree because they had texted me. And I said to myself, watching that TV, and watching Barack Obama, and boy, do I miss Barack Obama. I'm not going to even mention his name. I call him 45. I miss his grace. I miss his dignity. I miss his brilliance and his hard work. But I was so inspired to him. And I said to myself then, if I beat this, I'm going to end my 27-year Justice Department career when I'm 60, which was last July. And I'm going to fight for all those issues that I cared about from the time I could walk. Healthcare, public education. So you want to know the moment I decided to run for Lieutenant Governor? That was it.
Good evening. When I got here, it was the afternoon, so let me hang out with you here. Thank you for moderating. It's great to see you again. I just want to talk briefly about my light bulb moment. It actually took place when I was very young. I am the youngest of 4 children. I was raised in inner city Washington, D.C. I was actually born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My mom went to the University of Pittsburgh, both for college and for pharmacy school. And when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my parents unfortunately got divorced. Life happens. I love them both very much. But what that meant, who had those 4 kids, I was the youngest of the 4, needed a place to start over. She had to start over, regroup, get her footing, and try to start a comeback for our family. And fortunately for us, that comeback took place with my late maternal grandparents. Charles and Cynthia Butler, 2 of the best people I've ever known. My grandfather was a postal worker for 45 years. He walked to work every single day, was a union man. My grandmother was a nurse at Freedman's Hospital for 40 years. It's now Howard University Hospital. And in the mid-1980s, when they came knocking on their door in inner city D.C., saying I needed a place to start over, they took all 5 of us into their home. A tiny road. And what that simple act of love and their encouragement, really neighborhoods, strangers, our church, was allow my mom to have really the comeback of a life. For a couple of years as a pharmacist in D.C., sitting right across the street from my grandparents. My grandparents lived in it's the house where she raised all 4 of her kids. It's the house where my mom lived 30 years later. And just as miraculously, with the help of so many people, my mom was able, starting from that place, to send all 4 of her children to college and 2 of us to law school. From a place where we didn't know when tomorrow was going to be. Light bulb moment, when I knew that I was going to dedicate my life. Because what I said is that for people to make that story possible, for us that we started from that very tough place, they gave us something I like to call spirit. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had faith, and we had hope, and we had optimism. And people who said, no matter how dark today may seem, you have to believe that every single day. And that spiritual wealth changed our life. And what I believe is that when someone gives you that kind of spiritual wealth in your life, that you must repay. You can't sit back and enjoy a comfortable living. You have to make that story possible for more people. That is why I have been involved in public service throughout the better part of my life. I was a public policy major at Duke University. I ran for Attorney General. It's been made now 4 years ago. I left my job as a federal prosecutor where I had the pleasure of working with Gene. I left that job to run for Attorney General. It was my first time running for public office. We had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old at that time. So you can imagine that conversation with my wife when I got home. I was quitting my job to run for public service, but that's how passionate I was about supporting other people and making that American dream possible for them. And we in that election won nearly the primary election for Attorney General and the Washington Post endorsement. And we kept going over the last 4 years supporting progressive policies and Democratic politicians. And I declared a year ago, May of 2016, and I'm here to fight alongside you, to fight with you to make that American dream and that story possible for more Virginians. So God bless you. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
I think you'll be a real moment for this race was the day after November 8th. When 2 things happened. I had November 8th. It does not represent me, does not represent how I was raised, and what I've tried to give back to my community in the last 25 and advocacy for Virginia and Virginians. So I started after the Women's March when I marched from Virginia to Washington. 3 days later, I entered this race, and I plan to march all the way through, because you know what Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. I mean, keep going. I was the last person to enter this race, although I'm proud to say that I'm leading in the only published nonpartisan poll by nearly 2-to-1 of my opponents. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Emily's List, John Boyd, the president of the National Black Farmers Association, and just last night, the Gold Star father, Mr. Kazir Khan. Yeah, you can please. You know, I think there are we're all good Democrats, and we all care about Virginia, and we all care about our families. But I think that obviously this is a choice. We have to make choices. And I believe my experience of the last more than 30 years shows that I am more than qualified when it comes to my life lessons, my job experience, and my political experience. My pops was one of 13 children from an immigrant family from Czechoslovakia, moved to Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, in a 2-room home along the river and the steel mills. And that's where they worked. It was hard work. But my pops was the only one to graduate college with a mechanical engineering degree because he joined the Navy, and he went in the GI Bill. And he taught dance at Arthur Murray. And I keep telling people, I never got the gene. He tried as much. But he and my mother danced, tripped the light fantastic for 9 years. And she passed when I was 9 years old. And I think what started in my mind back then is what I'm doing today, is my pops raised me that I could do anything I wanted to in life. So I thank you men out there who empower all the women in your lives, that they will not be defined by gender or anything else, but their ability to work hard and be committed. And that's why I'm here today too. I will tell you my life story is my pops passed away a 1.5 years ago of Alzheimer's dementia, which we all go through. It's not an easy disease, you know that, but it's one that many of us are dealing with now. The other thing that I dealt with, my husband and I, in the last 12 years or more, has been we took care financially and emotionally in every way possible, my stepdaughter and my 2 grandchildren. Because a 1.5 years ago, she died of addiction. And we took care of them. We put the roof on their heads. We put the food on the table. I can't tell you the number of times we paid for the rehabilitative services, the hospitals, the clinics. And that's one of the reasons why I believe we have to expand Medicaid here in Virginia for the 400-some thousand families that are without. What I went through, I want no one else to have to go through. And I know many of you here in this room know people that are going through this. This is not just about mental illness, but it's about helplessness and hopelessness. And that's why I talk about the need, and I learned about it right out here, right in this area, 30 miles from here, from some parents and children out parent nowadays, from childbirth through college, and how hard it is, particularly on some folks that are making just minimum. There are a lot of children nowadays that need help. And there are so many services in the Commonwealth that no one knows how to access. So if I should be a children's advocate, I'm going to charge here. Because right now, no one knows where to go get help. Disaster. We created the Department of Homeland. We're #1 in school-to-prison pipeline when it comes to education services. I think we're in a crisis, and we need to do something about it. I served on the Virginia Tourism Corporation Board, thanks to then Governor Tim Kaine. And we learned a lot about Virginia and how tourism, and Virginia is dependent on tourism. But, you know, one thing that I learned at a board meeting one time, a fellow came in and he threw down a gold-painted oyster shell and he said, "We've let Maryland take the crab from us, don't let them take the oyster." And many of you know that we now have oyster trails that have grown up around the Northern Neck, jobs, small businesses, and what else happens? The oysters clean the water. So I pledge to you that I will be a full-time lieutenant governor, which many of you don't know, it's a part-time position right now. But I will do full-time, and I will travel the Commonwealth, working with some of the hardest hit communities as their advocate with their community leaders and their elected officials to help forge a stronger economy for the next 20, 30, 40 years and help them find their gold oyster shell. In politics, I helped re-elect Chuck Robb in 1994 against the evil Oliver North. Some of you may remember that. We were outspent 4 or 5 to 1 and we beat it back. From that point, I got the call of a lifetime to serve as Joe Biden's chief of staff in the Senate, where we lived love of family every single day. I came back to Virginia and I worked for some Virginia companies, advocating for stronger, better jobs in Virginia. I just came out here at this neck of the woods 2 weeks ago on a 3-day Resist the Pipeline tour.
All right.
And I'm proud to say I've led the three of us in coming out against that pipeline. Jean joins me as against those pipelines. Because it's time that some of our companies here in Virginia change the way they do business. They have to look forward. One of the other companies I worked for was out here because they knew they needed to change to be more socially responsible. And I helped them over the years change the way they do that by advocating for the Master Settlement Agreement and working with Ted Kennedy and Tom Harkin shoulder to shoulder to pass FDA oversight tobacco. As a result, children used to smoke at a 24% rate, teenagers, it's now down to 6. And I think that's a good thing. And I think companies like Dominion need to change the way they do business so we can bring in more renewables and focus on future jobs. And lastly, I will say to you, there have been 40 lieutenant governors in Virginia's history. 6 Johns, 4 Jameses, 2 Roberts, and 1 L. Douglas. No Mary, Louise, or Susans. And I hope you'll help me become the very first Susan. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm just going to leave it there. So we're going to start with some questions. In my job at the Center for Politics, I work with people from all over the state of Virginia. And there are a lot of people in our state that have felt disengaged and thus voted for Trump in November. What do you think the message should be to those disenfranchised voters so that we can appeal and enlarge our Democratic support throughout the state of Virginia? And we'll start with Susan and work our way down.
Okay, is it on? Good. I was recently down in the coal fields in Castlewood, and I met with 30 coal miners, all men and 2 women. And we talked about Donald Trump and how they knew that coal was never going to come back the way it once had been. But what he did was he talked to them and gave them hope. And I think in some ways we haven't done that very well. We need as a party, we need as a people to go out and work harder with them because what they really want is an opportunity. And I believe that's why the opioid addiction is so bad there. I know I've lived it. My stepdaughter did have a little bit of mental illness, yes. But what happened was that she became helpless and hopeless in her life situation. And that's what's happening with the coal fields. That's what's happening in Southside Virginia. When you don't have hope, you tend to turn toward opioids and other things, crime, anything else. So I do believe when I talked to them, I said, you know, we need to develop an economic plan. And how do you feel about changing what you do? And they said, look, we don't want dirty water. We want a clean environment. We just want jobs. And we need better health care down here. We need better schools. And we want to work with somebody who will help us do that. And I think it was very interesting to me that above any other issues which the Republicans tend to point to as Republican social issues, what they care most about is getting a job. And I think if we change redistricting and from jury-rigged to nonpartisan redistricting, it'll help all of us, particularly those folks that are struggling most.
Thank you.
How many know what the shad planking event is? Shad planking. On April 21st of this year, I went to the shad planking, and for those who don't know what it is, it's in Wakefield, Virginia, the peanut capital of the world. It's about halfway between Richmond and Norfolk. And years ago, it used to be the event for elected officials statewide and candidates statewide to go. And the Republicans have sort of taken it over. Well, I went. And Bobby Scott and I were one of the few Democrats there. I was the only statewide elected or candidate for office on the Democratic side. And guess what? A miracle happened. I told you I was a 27-year prosecutor. I was raised by a single mom. I almost flunked out of school, but you know what I am? I'm a fighter. I don't blink, I don't back down, and I don't break. And what I did is I had to listen to 6 statewide Republicans blabber And I got up there, and I thought they were going to throw tomatoes at me. The 400 people, mostly Republicans, a third intoxicated. And guess what? I talked about health care and Medicaid expansion. I talked about my medical journey. My daughter who almost died from lymphoma. I talked about this Italian kid who almost flunked out of high school and now teaches at Harvard Law School. I talked about my award-winning investigation into opioids. And guess what happened after I spoke? I got the biggest applause. The biggest applause. And John Fredericks, a conservative host, radio host, gave me the Big Kahuna Award because of my haymaker speech. Here's the punchline. I will do what Bernie Sanders did in McDowell County, West Virginia, about 6 weeks ago. I will go to every county in this state to promote Democratic core values. Because if we don't just listen, we don't have to just listen to Trump voters, we have to hear them. And we can't talk down to them. And that's what I did April 21st. And I don't care whether it's deep red or light red, I will bring the Democratic message throughout this entire state. And we are going to win in a landslide November this year if we do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also believe that we have to continue to reach out. We have to continue to show up. And as Gene mentioned, listen and also hear those voters. That's part of why I've traveled more than 35,000 miles around the Commonwealth of Virginia in this race. When we got to this race in May of last year, we said we're going to go everywhere. We know that there are vote concentrations in the large metropolitan areas, the urban crescent, Northern Virginia, Richmond, and Hampton Roads. About 60% of the electorate is there. I said we're clearly going to go there, but you know where else we're going to go? We're going to get off the highway. And we're going to go to other parts of this beautiful Commonwealth of Virginia and meet the great voters and the people who have concerns just like everywhere else. And when we have shown up, again, I've listened to those concerns, and what you find out many times is that once we get through the rhetoric and the partisan bickering and the fighting and the info wars and the fake news, and we get through all the things that have poisoned our politics, and we address people as people, we have a lot in common. And when I showed up in Southwest Virginia last week, again, when I've been South Side of Virginia, and I've spoken with people, many of whom voted for the current president, some of these counties as much as 80%, I talk to them, and what I will typically do is I'll ask them, politics aside, what is it that you want for your children and your grandchildren? If you can give me the top 3 things, I would love to hear them. And this amazing thing happens when people engage with you on that front. It's almost like a shield comes down. Because they're then talking about their family. They're not talking about politics. They're not talking about conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. And what they will often say are many of the things that we fight for. I just want my kid to be healthy. I want my grandchild to get a good education. I want my family to have a shot at sending the first person in our family to community college or to college. Hopefully we can buy a house one day, get a good job, start a small business, retire comfortably. And you find out that there is a core of common concern and anxiety and belief that what used to be possible in this country economically is no longer possible. That is at the heart of what so many of these voters have, and that drove them to vote for Donald Trump. And so what we have done is prioritize a message around economic security and opportunity, economic mobility, no matter where you start, what your last name is, the color of your skin, your gender, who you love, you're going to get a shot at the American dream. We're going to create a pathway to the middle class through vocational and technical training. We're going to reduce the debt and the burden of crushing student loan debt that is destroying the economic prospects of the entire generation. We're going to help people retire comfortably, strengthen unions, do the things that made this country a place where no matter where you started, you could end in a very wonderful situation. That is at the heart of, I think, what a lot of the economic anxiety is in this country, and that's why that's been the heart of our message from day one in this campaign. So, thank you so much.
Each of you kind of referenced some kind of comeback story in your inspirations, and I think that economic stability is very difficult if you have a serious health crisis, such as opioid addiction, cancer, serious illness. So I want to know what policies you advocate for in protecting or expanding Virginia's healthcare options. And we'll start with Jean.
Okay. I just told you that moment when I decided to run for lieutenant governor. But I got to tell you about another moment. You talk about comebacks. Our daughter Lee is not here. She's 26. She's my hero. She's Diane's hero too. In November 2009, Diane and I were asleep. Will, you were in your room and Jack was in his room. And our daughter had flown to South Carolina after Thanksgiving to go back to school. And at 1:45 in the morning, the phone next to our bed rang. And I can tell you this right now, when the phone rings at 1:45 in the morning, it's not good. And it wasn't. Our daughter had checked into an emergency room because she felt that she had an elephant on her heart. It wasn't an elephant. It was a lymphoma the size of a cantaloupe. Here is the great news. You want to talk about comebacks?
Yes.
Lee Rossi is the comeback kid. After 7 months of high dose at 4 hospitals, Duke, I forgot them all. A lot of tears, Diane. A lot of tears. A lot of laughs, actually. So much of getting health care, having health care, thinking about health care. And then in 2013, I had my crisis. And I almost died. But the great news is, Johns Hopkins saved my life. My daughter and I are miracles because we had great health insurance. And for me, what they did is they gave me a brand new blood supply. A brand new blood supply. Now the Democratic Party is always looking for a candidate with new blood. You know where I'm going? I have the newest blood of any candidate in American political history. In fact, I have the blood of a 4-year-old. That's why I'm so passionate. I have so much energy, right, Diane? But my point is this. I got 2 great opponents. But when it comes to health care, you're looking at a comeback kid who has a comeback daughter. And I don't bend, I don't break, and I don't blink. And I'm going to do what I did for 27 years as a federal prosecutor. I am going to fight for those who cannot speak for themselves. Victims alive and dead, ignored, the afraid, the forgotten. And you know who's ignored and forgotten in this state, especially by the Republicans? 400,000 people in this state do not have health insurance under Medicaid. That issue is so personal and passionate to me. I can't wait to talk to those Republicans in Richmond and have them look at me in the eye and say to me, a survivor, a comeback kid, who has a daughter who's a comeback kid, I dare them to say, we're not going to expand Medicaid. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to blame, not me. So when it comes to health care, I submit humbly that you can't find a better fighter than me.
Thank you, Gene. And healthcare is something that is such a critical issue here, not only in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but nationwide. Here's what we know, that President Barack Obama put his entire legacy at stake to get the Affordable Care Act passed. It was one of the bravest, most courageous decisions I've ever seen from a president. And they did that without any Republican support in the Congress. It was a bold, brave move. And we've seen that it works. For all of the imperfections and the hiccups that the other side likes to raise, more than 90% of Americans now have health insurance because of the Affordable Care Act. Virginia is now in the minority of states of having not expanded Medicaid. There are only 19 states that have not expanded Medicaid. Virginia is one of them. 31 other states have expanded, and the District of Columbia. And what we have seen in those states that have expanded Medicaid, insurance rates have gone up dramatically. The health of their population has increased tremendously. And this includes many states that are red states, states that opposed the Affordable Care Act, opposed President Obama, and went for Donald Trump. You all know someone named Senator Mitch McConnell? Ever heard that name? In Kentucky, this is the person who was famous, the majority leader in the Senate, for saying that his sole political goal in life was to make Barack Obama a one-term president. You remember that? Yes. They expanded Medicaid in his state. And they asked whether or not he would fight to repeal it in his re-election bid, and he would not even fight to repeal it in his own state. He knows the benefits. There are human lives and human costs at stake. And the economic case is compelling. We know here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, as Jean mentioned, it would cover 400,000 more Virginians. It would create 30,000 new jobs, which we desperately need. We have given away $10.4 billion in federal money that we'll never see again because we've not expanded Medicaid. We give away about $6.6 million every single day that we don't expand Medicaid. But most importantly, and beyond the dollars, this is a moral issue. We are allowing people to die solely because this General Assembly and those who oppose the president and oppose our governor, Terry McAuliffe, are vindictive politically. And we have got to change not only the makeup of the General Assembly to make sure that we can pass Medicaid expansion. There are 34 Democrats in the House of Delegates sitting currently, but there are 17 Republicans that hold seats won by Secretary Hillary Clinton. If we were to win those 17 seats, you add it to the 34, we have a majority in the House of Delegates. And I have vowed that every single day, if I'm lucky enough to be your nominee for Lieutenant Governor and be elected your Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to travel this Commonwealth of Virginia until we win back the House of Delegates, expand Medicaid, and make sure that 400,000 more Virginians have that life-saving funding. So thank you so much.
I am so proud that my former boss, Joe Biden, was there to help Barack Obama pass that bill in the Senate. Because we do have to sometimes realize that things are bigger than politics, and we have to work together, and it's a shame that we can't get that done now in Washington, and we can't get that done here in Virginia. And I worry about what's the next step. After they repeal the Affordable Care Act, what are they going to do about Medicare? And I'm sure there are many of you out there that are worried the same thing, and I have people come up to me every day and say, what's next? And I surely hope that we're all going to stand up and defend that, and I know we will. But not having Medicaid, I was in Lynchburg, and in those 2 years, they have 200. Thanks to our governor, I've been, and they anticipate June comes around, they're going to probably have more like 6. That's a lot of people. Maybe now can, but they're still. I also learned that it's not over when you withdraw. It takes the brain to retrain itself to get over a short-term process. With stage 4 cancer, they tell you that she keeps going through. To be able to live a happy, pain-free, healthy life shouldn't be this. You have to worry about it, and I guarantee you, I've been through enough in my life with illness, as has Jean, and addiction. Every single day to make sure everybody gets the coverage they need to live happy and healthy.
Switch gears a little bit. What are your paid for?
We're on a show who said you'd never seen. Education does know is about destroying it. Reassert education, a great public education system. We can make, we need to pay our teachers, to our students, to the entire, as if they're doing it for charity. This needs to be a local that accountability, make sure there's no one system. We've got to do schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia are accredited. That's a story that you won't hear from people. You will hear them paint a picture as if our system is in dire straits, and it's not. We do more, and we should do more. But I'm proud of our 23 community colleges. We need to provide universal kindergarten, county where you live, the zip code where different kinds. That's not the Commonwealth that we know. I feel every young person. I was proud of the County Public Schools Board oversight committee. Ways English is a second language. For new college, we can close out and committed to fight for that as well.
I agree. We do not need to expand. School administration. What are their biggest challenges? That school not prepared to expand a universal pre-K and any other nonprofits or partnerships that we get the kids more to come to school and to learn. About was the fact that the schools in Virginia, and he said to be prepared and learn. They're not laid out collaborative. Is that if you ask a child to down his trench, they can just go on their phone and look it up. They don't have to think. So you have to teach students how to think in a different way. And that's why I came out and applauded Senator Kaine, Senator Warner, and Congressman McEachin for a bill they put in the Congress right now to change the tax credit laws so that people can invest in our schools, build more schools at 66% of the cost to the locality, because they can take the tax credit and we can build more schools and have a better educational system. And I think if it's good enough for Donald Trump to use this tax credit to build the Trump Hotel in the old school, in the old post office, it's good enough for us Virginians to use to get a better education for our kids.
How many people know who U.S. Education Secretary Richard Riley was? All right? He served for 8 great years during the Clinton administration. And I'm proud to have Diana Rossi sitting in front of me. She was his chief of staff. And he was a phenomenal public servant because he believed in public education. He believed it passionately. And the current secretary, Justin's right, that moderator probably would have failed a drug test. But what I want to say is this. I have so much passion for public education. I was a product of public education in Connecticut. We live in the city. All 3 of our children have gone through K through 12 at City of Alexander schools, including T.C. Williams High School. Remember the Titans?
The Titans.
Well, since you brought that up, let me give you a little history lesson. Will Rossi was a slot wide receiver for the Titans. He's going to hate this. He holds 2 school records. He will never brag. I brag. He holds 2 school records on the same play. Crew when that happened. Is that correct? And he has a chance. So if he becomes the starting quarterback, we're going to change his middle name to Sunshine. Serious note. He had an 8th grade education. My single mom had to raise 4 unruly Rossi boys. And I was the youngest. And I went from a really good kid academically to horrendous. I almost flunked out of, I was summa cum laude. It was a couple things. I worked hard in the lumberyard. And I was all-state basketball, but at university. And I'm a firm chance at law school. I'm like Forrest Gump in that box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So what do I want to do for education? I want to focus on those at-risk kids in the early years, in the middle years, in the high school years. I want to get to them before they end up in that criminal justice pipeline. We have to shut that pipeline down. In a risk event last Saturday, I want to do more. Because when I go through the halls of kids, I had a basketball coach do vouchers them and put them in the beds. There are, I believe, in universal kids to educate kids age 4, because if we get to them early and give them hope, give them a dream, give them inspiration and confidence, then our recidivism rate. And the last thing I want to say is, I proudly teach at George Mason University. I teach constitutional law. It's a school of 30,000 kids. I've been doing it for 10 years. And the public education system, especially at the higher level in Virginia, is the best. And I want to make it even better. Thank you.
And I'm going to give you another. What policies should Democrats pursue in this area? And what are Virginia's specific concerns about immigration policy?
All of us here at the table went out to Dulles Airport when they first announced the ban. To me, it was not the America that I grew up in, frankly, and it was quite embarrassing and quite disheartening. But the people that were out there were fighting really hard, and they were fighting for what was right. And Virginia has a slogan, which I serve on the tourism board, and I say every day, and we live it every day, is Virginia is for lovers, not haters. And we count a lot, our economy counts a lot on tourism. And where do people come from when they come to the Commonwealth? They come through Dulles Airport. And we have to make it as easy as we can. I was recently at the Adams Center, which is where a lot of Muslims gather in the Northern Virginia community. And we sat around and had a roundtable discussion about this issue. And they said when all this started to happen, they would go through our cell phones and look and see, just to make sure there was nothing untoward or anything that they wanted to take a look at on our phones. So they said to me, so what we started doing is we left our cell phones at home, or we shipped them in front of them. Then what happened next? They get stopped and asked why they don't have cell phones. Something's wrong with that system. It really is. And I will tell you, I heard the most impassioned speech we all did last night by Mr. Khazir Khan, who I say I'm so proud to have received the endorsement from, about a woman who stopped him in the street one day and said that she wanted to tell him a quick story about her son. And her son had been coming home to school for not 1, but 2, but 3 days in a row, coming home, closing his bedroom door and locking himself away. And she finally, on the last day, knocked on the door and said, "What are you doing in there?" And he held up his phone to let her see, and it was Mr. Khan's speech to the convention. And he watched that because it made him feel good. It made him feel loved. It made him feel part of something. So what the mother did is the next day, she took that to the school principal and said, "This is what my son is doing. He's being badgered by bullies." And what the principal did is they brought every student in and watched that with them together. And the next day, the little boy came home and said, "I'm so happy I have friends all through school now." And that's how we have to deal with this. We have to talk to each other. We have to understand that we have differences, and our differences are what make us great and what make this country great.
Thank you.
I started working for the Justice Department in 1989, but from 1983 to 1989, I had the honor and privilege working for Governor Bill O'Neill of Connecticut, and I know nobody knows who he was. But you may know the governor whom he replaced, Ella Grasso. Ella Grasso was the first female governor elected in her own right in the United States of America. And in Connecticut, we were so proud of Ella, we called her Ella. And in November of 1978, my first vote for governor was for Ella Grasso. But sadly, she had to resign because of cancer in 1980, and I worked for Governor O'Neill in his Washington office for 6.5 great years, where I met my wife Diane, who was working for the Southern Governors, and Chuck Robb and Jerry Belials, 2 great Virginia governors. But what did I learn during those 6 years? I worked on immigration issues. I also worked on education issues with Bill Clinton. I served on a panel with him. But I worked on a lot of governors' issues, including immigration. And ironically, Ronald Reagan, in 1986, had a phenomenal immigration bill that allowed millions of undocumenteds to take that peaceful, lawful path to citizenship. And I think, I forget the senator from Wyoming, but he was the author of that. And it's ironic, I don't call him by his name, I just call him 45. But this current president, number 45, what he's doing is, he is destroying the moral fabric of who we are. All 4 of my grandparents came from Northern Italy. I am full-blooded Italian. And I gotta tell you this, if they were to come into this country today, I don't know if they would make it. And I gotta correct Susan a little bit. When Susan and Justin were at National Airport that night, guess where I went? It was a Saturday night. I went to an event and we're now, we should focus on. I never prosecuted a mother who was undocumented and had kids. I never prosecuted a young child. And I would be outraged if my agents stood outside a school, a church, a rec center, and picked somebody up. I would kick him out of my... He wants to create an army.
We have to be our nation of immigrants. And so we have to understand others. And, as was mentioned, I did go to Dulles Airport for federal practice. I would see this as being alone, because there were grandparents being separated and crying, couldn't far away from. Many of them also, this changed me. I am proud to say that as there that night we did, and resisted the protesters. to this administration. We said, contained that night at Dulles Airport. It would not have happened if we had. I was here in Harrisonburg months for years at Skyline Middle School, and I was very excited to go to Skyline because they told me before I go to the East Coast, and I was anxious in Harrisonburg. It's one of the most diverse. Where that one of the kindest places in the Commonwealth and in this country, accepting people who are facing, in some cases, certain death, discrimination. They come to America as a refuge. To seek a better life and safety and security and opportunity for their family. And Harrisonburg in this area has welcomed them. Also because there are industries here, great industries in agriculture, and farming and other areas where they import laborers to work. They send their kids to Skyline Middle School. And I went to that school and I was just blown away. Somewhere on the order of 40 different languages that were spoken. I talked to 2 different classes, kids. It looked like the United Nations I was seeing. And you also saw these kids get along. They loved each other. They came together, they loved each other. So they had a mock president, and they had a cafeteria where all the different classes got to vote, each one represented. I'm proud to say that Secretary Scotland and Donald Trump won. That's the future of this country. I agree with Gene, the 287G program, where they try to conscript state that people, and we need to resist. There are standards. That is, we posted pictures, and it was great. I don't want to go back there. I definitely don't want to post any pictures. People in the federal government to start looking through those pictures to figure out who's here with papers and out. Overnight, cares for one another. We're going to resist. But there's a saying in Virginia. It's actually our state. You all may know in the English as "thus all." Picture of Virginia standing on the chair. Pretty good to me in 2017.
This is your chance to ask our future leaders questions about Virginia now and what you want Virginia to be. This nice lady right here.
In the county I come from, one of the major hurdles for children at school is they're hungry.
Yes.
School hungry, school food programs have been cut, churches are trying to step in. Any suggestions?
Well, when I worked for the governor of Connecticut from 83 to 89, one of the things I worked on was education issues, and I worked a lot on the school lunch program. And I dealt with administrators a lot. And if kids are hungry at school, they're not going to learn if they don't have to learn. I disagree with Justin a little bit. It's the most diverse, and I can tell you why. There are 3,500 kids, grades 9 through 12. It's white, African American, Hispanic, and Justin mentioned 40 different languages. I think there are 55, 60 in T.C. Williams. It's just a beautiful thing, and I'm very proud that our 3 kids have attended T.C. Williams. But what I want to say is, going to football again. Diane worked with the football coaches, and what used to break my heart, it still breaks my heart, we would have to serve them meals at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon because they weren't going to get one at night. And it broke my heart that we'd serve them spaghetti. I love spaghetti, okay? But we'd serve them spaghetti, and if we didn't have a breakfast and a lunch, and if they didn't get that meal from the football coach, they would go all day without eating. How can a kid learn? How can a kid participate in sports? So here's my answer to your question. I will fight like a dog to preserve the school lunch program, and I will fight like a dog to expand it, because it is a good program. I worked on it in the 80s with Clinton, with Belials, and Rob, and it's a great program. Republicans hate it. They hate it. Remember that jerk that said that ketchup is a vegetable? Okay? Okay, Stockman. I dealt with those issues. And at the state level and the federal level, I would be a great advocate. You know, there's a lot of lobbying that goes on Capitol Hill and at the White House from governors and lieutenant governors. I observed it, I did it. And as lieutenant governor, I want to take that position and be a bully pulpit up on Capitol Hill And I will be a fierce advocate to preserve and expand the school lunch program, because at T.C. Williams, if we didn't have that program, it would be a disaster.
This is one of the saddest issues, that in a country like ours, in a commonwealth like ours, that any children are going hungry. I know our current First Lady, Dorothy McAuliffe, has been doing a lot of work on this and trying to help find more funding and help make sure that children have proper meals. There's no way that you can learn when you're hungry. I think we all learned that. I think that we really have to include it as part of the education package. It's not just about facilities, it's not just about teachers, and they're as important as they are, but children have to be prepared and have a full belly and good nutrition in order to learn, and I will do everything I can to expand it and work with other nonprofits to help expand it, and to work with other community organizations that I know now are going to different grocery stores when things can get thrown away but are not expired yet, to pick those up and put them back in the schools, so we can try to make sure that no child goes to bed or goes to school hungry one day in the year.
Absolutely, and so I think that we need to make sure, again, that each of our young people in schools are not only receiving meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and not just during the week, but also over the weekends, because many kids, when they leave on Friday, the next meal that some of them have, the next substantive meal, is on Monday morning. And that can't be. So we've got to wrap around. These kids, are around all 7 days. So we've got to find ways to make sure they get meals during those time frames. But we also need to focus on nutrition. This is something that our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, who was extraordinary, really focused in on. She looked at the policies in our schools where we had a lot of foods that were not good for our young people, a lot of sugary drinks and snacks and things that contributed to things like childhood obesity and other health issues that are plaguing our young people, and gave healthy alternatives so the young people can learn these habits early on in life and hopefully have healthier lives down the line and not deal with this many health issues later on. So this is something that the Trump administration, as you all may have read about, is trying to roll back. They just have made a series of announcements that they're going to stop some of the stricter nutritional guidelines the Secretary of Education under President Obama had put into place. This is exactly the wrong direction to go in. We need to care, and Michelle Obama said, we need to think about the fact that people want our young people eating bad food. Who would want that? Why would they want to do that? And I think we have got to be focused on not only feeding our kids, but feeding them healthy and nutritious meals, teaching them the values that will allow them to live longer, healthier lives and be much more productive down the line. And so finally, one other thing I wanted to mention is that there are some parts of the country where kids are in debt because of their lunches and their meals in schools. And they are shaming kids. I saw a story where they wrote on a kid the amount that their parents owed for their school lunches. I mean, imagine shaming a young kid for trying to get a meal, whether or not their parents can pay. That needs to be outlawed and banned. I hope it never happens in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But here's also where the rubber met the road. And the school-to-prison pipeline and the lack of nutrition collided. There was a story, which you all may have read about, in the Washington Post, where a young student actually took an extra 65-cent carton of milk because he was hungry. He was in the free and reduced lunch program. He took that extra carton of milk, was accosted at that point by a school resource officer, had a battle of words, which elevated and escalated into shoving, but nothing too particularly serious. That young person was then charged with felony assault on an officer and was put through the criminal justice system. And had this not been highlighted, had this not been brought to the attention of all of us through the media, this kid could potentially have been a felon for trying to steal a 65-cent carton of milk. This is shameful. We need to reform the way we do criminal justice in this country, which should get a shot with making sure.
Back here.
Yeah, I'd like to get into a little bit of reality. I think everybody in the room would agree with the Medicaid issue. Wednesday morning, Goldilocks will present his new budget, which includes an $860 billion cut to Medicaid. So the probability is that Medicaid won't get cut that much, but it will be cut. Tiffany, who's currently in power. So it seems to me that even if Virginia were to say, we're going to join the program, if we were fortunate enough to get enough good Democrats elected, and there may not be enough money for those 19 states that are not participating to join. So what I'd like to hear, if this all transpires and we do not have sufficient Medicaid monies, along with the SNAP and everything else that's being cut, what's planned early in the
Issue. I don't think we give an inch of where our pushing back to do away with the 4 million people. In this case, they control the White House, they control the Congress, and they control the Supreme Court. And yet, because we resisted and we fought, that bill died. And so we can never, ever give an inch and assume that just because he proposes something horrific, that it's going to happen. So we have to fight it at the federal level, but also at the state level. Even if they do make cuts to Medicaid, we still need to expand it. Because I want to cover, even if we can't cover all 400,000 Virginians because there's not enough money down the line, I think covering as many Virginians, one more Virginian who gets medical coverage under Medicaid and health insurance coverage is one more than we have today. And so I think we need to basically join those other states who are benefiting from this. These are our tax dollars, by the way. Each of us is paying these taxes to the federal government, and that money is then going to the 31 other states that did the right thing and expanded Medicaid. So I think we don't give up an inch at the federal level. I was just talking to Warner recently, and I was co-chair of Senator Mark Warner's campaign in 2014. They are incredible senators, and they are fighting that fight, so we have to hold the line. But even if they do cut the budget, I think we still need to fight to expand Medicaid here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that's going to require, again, at this point, us winning back some seats to make that happen. So I vow to fight to do that. Resist.
Okay, obviously, we have to fight. We have to fight with everything that we have. We found recently, you all know, but they did not vote out the Affordable Care Act yet. They're going to take another shot at it, obviously, but the fact that we fought back changed a couple of votes in Virginia, as you know. I'm not sure where it's going to go next time, but I think the mood of the country is such that I do not believe that they're going to be cutting anything like that, if they could. I think there are people up on the Hill that care enough about it, and I know that we are fighting hard enough in our state and other states that we'll be able to keep from getting cut too much more than we have. I mean, we've already got over 400,000 with that. And I, like you, worry about the future in these cuts. I worry about the future of Medicaid cuts. I worry about the future of Medicare cuts and Social Security cuts. But we have proven time and time again that resistance does work. And as long as we all stay involved, you know, I tell people wherever I go, democracy is not a spectator sport. As long as you stay involved, and as long as you let your elected officials know how you feel and you organize, anything is possible. And of course, this is our health care we're talking about. So we don't take it lightly. We have to fight it. We have to fight it every day. But you also have to thank Tim Kaine and Mark Warner, too, for fighting the good fight. And let them know that you're behind them as well.
I'm going to say this right now. I know everybody says the word resist, and everybody says that word, but here's what I want to do. Democrats have core values, and we can't bend, we can't break, and we can't blank. And I'm going to tell you this, sir. I respect your question. I humbly disagree. We are going to beat them to a pulp on Medicaid, and I'll tell you why. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan had the block grant approach, and that's what they're doing right now. They want to impose block grants. And block grants basically, okay, states, we're going to ask more of you, we're going to give you less money. And then we're going to solve it by saying you have flexibility. Governors, lieutenant governors know that's a con. That is a con. So when I become lieutenant governor, I'm going to talk about the con in Richmond, and I'm going to Capitol Hill and talk about the con, because I did it in the 1980s. And you know what's great? Is the Republicans who opposed it a few years back, they opposed it for one reason.
there was a black man in the White House. I am fully convinced in Richmond did not want to give Barack Obama any credit for anything. That's why we had the birth post Medicaid. But the ice is chilling, it's melting. I'll give you one good example. John Fredericks, that conservative radio, in favor of Medicaid expansion, because Justin's right. But he knows that Pence did it, and all who didn't want, they took that money and care and hospitals. Medicaid funds, and where are those jobs going to be created? In Lee County, in Wise County. Lee County is the farthest west where I've been. And I want to tell you my experience in the opioid crisis, because that money will help attack it. When I was a prosecutor for the last 15 years, I led the largest federal state investigation into the opioid crisis in United States history. It's called Operation Cotton Candy. And if you're bored tonight, go on Netflix and look for Dr. Feelgood. It's on Netflix. It's a Hollywood documentary, came out last year. It's about my investigation, and it's about my trials against a pain doctor, Candy. He once wrote a prescription for a day money. And the other first and only Career Achievement Award for Operation Cotton Candy and my opioid work. And that Medicaid money, that 8.4, 10.4, whatever it may be, it's going to help addicts, mental health counseling. And when you go to Richmond and tell them that, and you got a fighter like me, who had a whole court, probably more than any federal prosecutor in history, they will blink and they will realize that we are being conned, we are being fooled, and we're not going to be. So, sir, do I have a plan B? No. That is to fight.
Yes, and thank you so much for that really wonderful question. I had the honor of meeting you and your mom outside earlier, and God bless you. This is such an important issue. The Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, we didn't talk a lot about what the Lieutenant Governor does, but of course, you preside over the Senate, and you break ties in the case of a tie-breaking vote, and that's important, in particular because right now the Senate is split 21 Republicans and 19 Democrats. So you often do have ties. Up until 2015, it was split evenly, 20-20. But what you also do as Lieutenant Governor of Virginia is you sit on a number of boards and commissions all around the state that help shape legislative and public policy here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. One of those very important boards and commissions that I will elevate in terms of its importance is the Virginia Disability Commission. And that is the commission that deals with issues around access for those who have disabilities, who are otherwise able, people who have hearing impairments, seeing impairments, who have other types of challenges that mean that we need to make sure we're providing the resources so that they can have full participation, not only in our democracy, but in our everyday civic life. You mentioned some of the most important examples in voting, in our school systems. These are for young people and adults alike. We also need to make sure that there are resources in our community colleges, in our healthcare facilities, and that we follow the mandate that we're very strict about the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is a federal law that, as we know, was last modified in the 90s, but it made so many things possible in terms of access to a life, a quality life here in the country. But in some states, they're a little bit more lax than others about enforcement at the federal and the state level. So we need to enforce that law, provide more resources, and really use that Disability Commission in the Lieutenant Governor's seat and leadership on that commission to highlight those issues and make sure the resources get directed where they need to be. So I commit to you that I would do that. Thank you. And let's have an interpreter at the next debate.
Thank you. I had the privilege of working with Senator Tom Harkin and Joe Biden in the Senate on Americans with Disabilities Act. And as you know, Senator Harkin's brother was deaf. And I have the privilege of going to Gallaudet with him on numerous occasions to converse with the students there and their difficulties. There's a funny story that I tell that it's kind of related to this. I think it's important that everybody has choices and everybody's voices get heard on what they need to succeed. A number of years ago, when my stepdaughter was staying with us in the summer, and my granddaughter was staying with us in the summer when my stepdaughter was going through her addiction, my granddaughter heard me on the phone with my husband talking about the need to have the tires changed on my car. And I hung up the phone, and my granddaughter looked at me and she said, "Grandma, Susu, as a feminist, you should be changing your own tires." And I looked at her and said, well, it's because I'm a feminist I have a choice, and I choose not to do that. I think it's every American's right to have choices in their life, to be able to succeed and live happy and healthy. And I'm proud to say that today, my granddaughter calls herself an activist, and that's why I've been an activist and an advocate in Virginia for over 25 years.
When I worked for the governor of Connecticut, I worked on a lot of disability issues, and I realized that the power of providing services to individuals with challenges and disabilities and the results you get from that can be profound. And I want to give you one great example. For the last 20 years before I retired, I trained about 1,000 federal prosecutors. 1,000. They were my kids, my students. They were new and experienced, what I call baby prosecutors. And one of them sitting to my right, as a matter of fact. But one of them, I won't mention his name. One of those 1,000, with all due respect to Justin, is one of my favorites because of this. He was blind. And when he came into my training program in the U.S. Attorney's Office, which was about a 6-month program, I had some reservations, but it was the most rewarding experience of my life. Why? We provided him the services and the support to be a federal prosecutor. We had a paralegal for him. We had certain things that we had to do. But it was so professionally rewarding for this reason. I mentioned that I had 110 trials. One of them was with this blind prosecutor. He was the lead. I was his coach and mentor. And it was a 2-week trial. 50 witnesses. It was a crooked dentist. And he was phenomenal. His closing argument and rebuttal were brilliant. And what I learned from that, if you provide the services and support and the access to people with disabilities, they can conquer the moon. So do I believe in what you asked? Absolutely. I lived it. By the way, the dentist, he was found guilty. He earned it.
We're out of time for questions. So at this point, I would like to wrap it up. And so we are wrapping up, and Frank is coming up to give out prizes. Hold on to your hat.